Good afternoon, everybody. Hell's Unicorn here once again, and I'm going to be doing just a quick commentary on the recent verdict of the Casey Anthony trial. I have not discussed this trial at any length whatsoever on this channel, and for a very particular reason, and that is it's basically a media circus. Has been from day one, basically. I don't approve of the idea of all media resources within the mainstream media, but even outside of the mainstream media, being focused in on one particular microcosm of American society. There are other things that need to be reported. I think it is the job particularly of the mainstream media, if they were doing it, of course, to be focused on federal affairs. That is their jurisdiction. They are national news networks. They should be focused on national news. Furthermore, this approach to journalism has a very strong propensity for tainting jury pools. So, fact of the matter is, this kind of media coverage basically can, in the end, destroy the concept of justice. This is the mentality of the mob and of witch hunters, to pile on and pile on and pile on with opinion-oriented commentary from people who know next to nothing about the case. I don't think I even need to get into how much I detest people like Bill O'Reilly and other similar pundits, because they're all opinion and very little actual factual data. Nevertheless, we have a verdict. Apparently, Casey Anthony is not guilty of all the major stuff. She has been found guilty of 5 separate charges involving giving false evidence to law enforcement, which her defense attorneys basically admitted to as the trial was proceeding. A lot of people who have basically declared by their own judgment based on the information they've got from the media probably believe that this is a miscarriage of justice. And in the end, it may turn out to be just that. There is every reason to believe that Casey Anthony is guilty of something, whether it's negligence, whether it's murder, manslaughter, or what have you. She's probably guilty of at least one of those things that she was acquitted on. However, there are 2 sticking points in this case that most people are not paying attention to that really need to be underscored. Number 1, no witnesses to the event. Number 2, no DNA evidence, which in essence counts the same. It's just as good as having witnesses if it can be found and if it can be determined that it was not planted there by somebody else. We have neither one of those. If we have no evidence, there's no case. And from the very beginning, what we had here was innuendos on both sides. The defense was using innuendos to combat innuendos. We had people constantly babbling on about how this woman was going out and partying while her child was missing. Maybe that's something that a good mother wouldn't do, but she's not charged for being a bad mother. She's being charged for murder. And, you know, American mentality when it comes to trials is basically the mentality of the hive. Forget the facts, it's the seriousness of the charge. And this is how people get treated in all sorts of different situations where the media is involved. I'm just going to leave all of my viewers, be you religious or non-religious, with a little something from the Bible to just give you an idea of my perspective on this and the reason why I basically writ this entire thing off as being nothing more than a circus from the get-go. A violation of the law, according to Scripture. And when they had threatened them further, they let them go, finding no basis on which they might punish them. Acts 4:21. Obviously, if no one violates the law, there is no problem and no further need for due process. And then specifically on witnesses. In order to establish the fact of a transgression of the law, there must be at least 2 witnesses to the violation of that law. Deuteronomy 19:15 reads, "One witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity, or for any sin. In any sin that he sinneth, at the mouth of 2 witnesses, or at the mouth of 3 witnesses, shall the matter be established. To any practicing Christians out there who are basically shouting at their televisions right now saying, oh, this is horrible, she should have been thrown into the gas chamber or given the lethal injection. Remember Deuteronomy 19:15. And remember how that was applied when Jesus dealt with the potential event of a prostitute being stoned to death by an angry mob. There were no witnesses to convict. There was only one witness in the general sense, and that was Jesus, who knew for a fact that this woman was guilty. But since there were no other witnesses, and since Jesus, his ministry involved the perfect keeping of the law, he was not in a position to condemn her. In the same respect, we are not in a position to condemn Casey Anthony. Whether or not she did this or not is now between her and her Maker. And anybody who would think to visit vengeance on her is just as guilty as she might be. My advice to everybody who's been glued to their television sets and watching this trial is, get a life. Find something more constructive to do with your time. And if you're really feeling proactive, send some angry letters to your news affiliate and tell them point blank that you want them to cover actual news. Media circuses like this encourage sloth in the media. It encourages them to fixate on one thing so they don't have to do any actual fucking work. Pardon my French. So, Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, anybody else who's been glued to this trial, shame on you. Shame on you for not doing your jobs and covering the real news. And that pretty much does it for me. With prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.